Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry I was a little bit late coming in. I'll wait another minute or two to see if anyone else joins us. All right, thank you for joining us again today. Today I have a couple of small announcements to make. I'm going to start with a change that we've made to ODSP and Ontario Works. We have heard from a number of people over the last month and a half or so that there are a large number of people who are receiving social assistance from us who also have part-time jobs that have been affected as a result of COVID-19. Those individuals will be applying for the CERB benefit or for EI, and in the past there has been a clawback on any type of revenue that is given to somebody who's receiving two types of government assistance, whether it's provincial or federal. And what we've decided to do is change that process so that it's being treated as earned income, the same earned income, the same way as it would be treated when they had the job that they have had impacted as a result of COVID-19. So those individuals then who are on ODSP or OW who have had their income impacted as a result of COVID-19 will not see a clawback on any of the benefits that they get through EI or through CERB. It'll be treated the same way as if they were still at the job that they were working at prior to what the issues are right now with COVID-19. The second thing I'd like to talk about is an investment that we're making for our seniors. We recognize that a number of seniors are having difficulty going out to get groceries. They're having a little bit of difficulty with food security on it. And there are a number of great organizations in the province right now who are helping with it. So we're investing $10 million in that to help organizations like Meals on Wheels deliver food and groceries to our seniors who are not able to get out right now as a result of COVID-19. Ultimately, everything that we're trying to do is to make life easier for people who are impacted by COVID-19 and to make sure that we're looking after the health and the well-being of everybody that's involved. I'd like to talk a little bit about the roundtables that we're doing. We had our first series of roundtables last night. Those were for professional services, both in the city and in the county. We had a little bit more than 50 people in total who took part in the roundtables last night, and we received some very good feedback that we'll be carrying forward to the Ministry of Finance so that as we get to the position where we're able to open things back up again, we're doing it in a responsible manner that is going to be to the benefit of industry, of business, of commerce here in Ontario. Each of us as elected officials have experience in our own lives with different industries, but none of us are experts in everything that goes on in the province. So it's incumbent on us to make sure that we're getting the feedback from different companies, from different businesses, from different individuals, to make sure that we're not missing something as we move forward. And I can't thank the different people that were part of the roundtable last night enough. We received some great feedback. One in particular, if you look at agriculture in Ontario, we've had for a number of years a whole campaign around buy local. Local agriculture is any agriculture that is grown in Ontario. That is considered local. And perhaps what we should be looking at is expanding that so that any activity that happens in Ontario is considered local activity. So that somebody from Windsor, for example, who wanted to come and vacation in the Kawarthas, they would be coming to their local Kawarthas and changing a lot of our advertising, a lot of our promotion when that time comes to emphasize that your neighbors are everybody in Ontario. And if you look at it as you're helping out your neighbor, you're helping out the local business, you're helping out the local person, that this is something that's a good news story for all of Ontario as we move forward. once we're in a position that we can come out of the COVID-19 pandemic. There are two shout-outs that I'd like to make today as well. I'm going to start with David and Pat Morden. David and Pat Morden have stepped up and made a $50,000 donation to Peterborough Regional Hospital for the acquisition of PPE. This is a very, very generous donation for them, and they're looking after the best interest of people in our community, and I can't thank them enough for stepping up and doing something like that. And the second shout out I have today is for the Buckhorn Community Care Organization. They have taken it on themselves to help seniors with groceries. Many seniors in Trent Lakes are finding it a little bit difficult, a little concerned about going into the local grocery store. They recognize that they're in a more vulnerable position than, say, someone who is in their early 20s. And because of those concerns, perhaps they're not going out and getting enough food or proper food. They're trying to live on what they have in their cupboards currently. The Buckhorn Community Care has set up a program where you can call Community Care. You can call Foodland in Buckhorn, order the food or the groceries that you want, and volunteers from Community Care will come pick up the groceries for you and deliver it to you. If there is anyone who is looking for volunteer activity to help in this community, Community Care is one of those organizations then that is doing some great work to help some of our most vulnerable. And if you have the ability to help deliver groceries to seniors, I'm sure they'd love to hear from you. I'll open it up for questions. Pete, since this is the first time that you've joined us with it, there's an option under participants to raise your hand virtually. We ask that people stay muted until they raise your hand. We'll open it up based on the people who have raised their virtual hands. And I'll start with Taylor Clydesdale. Taylor, go ahead.
Dave, hope you're doing well right now.
I am, yes. Thank you.
That's good to hear. I just had some questions about, there's been talks about, what the plan is for reopening things. And I'm just wondering, what those discussions look like right now and what might be some of the first sectors and industries which would be affected by things reopening.
Thanks, Taylor. It's we're in the planning phase right now of how we're going to open things back up again. We have to do it looking first and foremost at the health of the people of Ontario. We've seen some very good progress in flattening the curve. In some parts of Ontario, the reproductive rate is below 1, which means that the virus is dying off in those areas. We're not there yet where we're ready to open things back up again. That's why we've started doing the roundtables. We need to get feedback from all of the different businesses, all the different types of industries that there are on how they see Ontario opening back up again and how they can work as a safe, productive company and ensure the safety of all of their employees as well as all of their clients. We're still in that planning phase because we're looking for ideas from industry, from businesses on how they think they could do things in a responsible manner. I'm not at a point yet where I can tell you we will be opening by a certain date or which industries will be opening first.
Just in terms of looking south of the border, I know this week some states have begun to issue orders that businesses can reopen. Do you feel that there's any pressure coming both, south of the border or at home from our own industries to kind of get things open sooner rather than later?
We've obviously had a lot of conversations with people about the economic side of it. I would be very, very hesitant to take a look at what's happening south of the border and to suggest that that is the direction that we should be going. I'll use New York State as a perfect example. It's roughly twice the population of Ontario. We've had just over 600 deaths as a result of COVID-19. They're pushing 20,000 deaths. I don't think that they have taken an appropriate approach with respect to human life, and I'm not sure that I want to follow what they're doing because personally I think that we should be putting a very high value on life and making sure that the least number of people are affected negatively with COVID-19.
All right, I think that's all for now. Thank you so much, Dave.
Thank you. Matt, we'll go to you next.
What were some of the concerns that you were hearing from the business professionals over that first roundtable?
It was actually a very, very productive conversation. Most of the business professionals, they're part of a service industry that was deemed as essential services. So they weren't in a position, most of them weren't in a position where they actually had to close down. They had to change a lot of their processes in order to be open and change their protocols, but they made those changes. They talked about a lot of different things of the changes that they made and how they think that will actually put them in a better position as they open up. And I'll give one great example. On the real estate side, they've gone to more virtual tours and virtual open houses. And the agents themselves, when they were talking about it, said that that puts those agents in a much safer position because they're no longer alone in someone else's house with a stranger. And it's given them a much better sense of security. With respect to some of the other things that they'd like to see opened up, they talked about ensuring that when businesses open, they follow proper PPE protocols, but not to the point where it's so expensive that they can't actually make any income from it. And finding the balance then, how do we put protocols in place for retail business that allows for that level of protection, but we don't go so far where we're mandating things that become very expensive. And one of the examples that an individual gave was it's possible to put up plexiglass or a very thick, heavy plastic barrier as a vapor barrier so that a cashier is not being subjected to any water droplets from someone else's speech. If we were to change that and say that it had to be a glass barrier that was put up with metal frame holding that, that becomes a much more expensive way of doing it. And when we put these protocols in place, we need to make sure that we're having it as safe as possible, but not putting it in a position where we're mandating something like tempered glass versus plexiglass.
Thank you.
Graham, you have a question from Extra 90.5. You have to unmute yourself first, Graham.
Every single time. Morning, Dave. Afternoon, Dave. One question I was wondering about from this meeting that you had was in regards to supports that might be required if or when businesses are reopening. We've talked a lot about how there's supports there now as, you know, many businesses have had to lay people off or had to find ways to help financially support their employees. Have they come forward yet in any way that, you know what, we're going to need this much leeway time or this much head time or financial supports to reopen again?
There wasn't a great deal of focus on financial supports. More of the focus that came from last night's group was around reducing red tape to make sure that you can open quickly so that we don't have additional barriers that get put in front of them. They talked about protocols around PPE and how we had, when we were implementing those things, we had to make sure that we weren't doing something that was going to be cost prohibitive for them. If we were going to put forward a protocol on protection, could we look at all of the ways of accomplishing that same goal and not have it so that it's cost prohibitive? They really were focusing more on the non-financial incentives. And I think it was a reflection of the fact that they're, for the most part, they're in the service industry. They're not in a retail side of it. And more of what they need to have is consumer trust from people. If you look at a lawyer, an accountant, a tax professional, or an insurance agent, or a financial expert, those are all people who you build a relationship with. It is a much more close-knit relationship, and it's a closer proximity. You're sitting across the table from a lawyer. You're sitting side by side with a financial advisor. You're working across the table again or across the desk from somebody with who's an insurance professional. And they were looking at different ways that they could still have that level of trust with people to be in close proximity with each other. Are there any other questions? All right. Thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate this. Appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Thank you.